Okay, so we just had a big leak about the Canon EOS R5 Mark II. This is coming from Canon Rumors. This is a CR2, which means it's not necessarily the highest end. It's not a CR3. They don't consider this a guarantee, but they do see this coming from a reliable source. And it honestly kind of sounds a little odd and a little too good to be true. So I'm going to go over the specs and also go over when they expect this thing to come out. We are on Canon Rumors. Like I said, this is a CR2, and it's saying that this is coming Q2 of 2023. So Q2 of 2023, it starts somewhere around April, I believe, and then it goes up until about the end of June. So that would be Q2. And it's funny because I actually did do a live stream with Simon, the Ordinary Filmmaker, and I was giving my case of why I thought that the R5 Mark II was also going to be coming very soon, sooner rather than later. He didn't think it was coming out, and then this came out right after because, I mean, it was crickets for a while. I had good reasons to believe that it may be coming out. I don't necessarily doubt the validity that it may be coming in Q2 of 2023, but I'm starting to doubt the validity of some of these specs, so let's go over them. Okay, they say that this will have a new 61 megapixel Cmos Bsi sensor. This right here is kind of the first red flag to me. I don't know why they would make this exactly the same megapixel count as the Sony A7 R5 and the A7 R4. I don't believe at all that this will be a Sony sensor. Canon usually makes all their sensors in-house. So I just find this particular spec a little odd, and I guess I'm taking that with a grain of salt. They say it will have dual digit X processors, which if it does, it will be absolutely insanely powerful, assuming that they actually connect it properly and they're able to get the most out of both the processors. They say it will have 30 frames per second electronic shutter with tracking, so no shock there. 12 frames per second mechanical shutter. Jared Polin, he actually said that the 30 frames per second would possibly have some bad rolling shutter, considering that this is going to be such a high megapixel sensor, along with the fact that it's not a stack sensor, at least not according to this rumor. So he was basically saying that 12 frames per second is where it's going to stay. I wouldn't be surprised if they bump that up to 15 frames per second mechanical. I believe that that's what they do with the Canon R6 Mark II. So it says it will have the same 8 stops of IBIS. One of the big issues that most people have had with the IBIS of the R5 is the fact that it has that weird wobbling that goes on the corners, especially if you're in a wide lens. So for people who are using this, and a lot of people are wanting to use this as like a, I guess, content creator type vlogging style camera, it just kind of was weird. It made a lot of people nauseous. So I do hope that they can at least fix that if this is the case and they are sticking with the same IBIS. Hopefully there's something in the software, or maybe they have some mechanical way that they can actually freeze the sensor so it doesn't do that. Okay, it says it will have new high resolution mode similar to pixel shift. Again, nothing shocking here. It says it will have a 2, 4, and 8 times digital teleconverter. I mean, essentially this is just going to be cropping in on the sensor. Jared Polin also kind of made a joke about this, saying why do this? Why not crop after the fact? And I kind of get his argument, but to me, I personally like to try to get best composition while I'm shooting. And sometimes if you're shooting just, say for example, I'm shooting at 50, and if I'm 8 timesing that, then that gives me, I'm going to do bad math. That gives me a 400 essentially millimeter, worth of reach. I mean, that's a far difference. So if I'm shooting at 50, I might not necessarily be on the subject that I want to be on. But if I can do a digital converter and jump up 8 times, then maybe I'm seeing that bird in the tree or whatever else I'm actually aiming at. So I think it's a good feature. I would put it in, and people can crop after the fact, or they can use it if they want. It's the same dual pixel CMOS autofocus 2, so the same one from the R3 and the R6 Mark II. Great stuff. It says internal 8K at 60 frames per second video recording, 8K raw video specs to be confirmed. Okay, so It's not necessarily saying that it's raw. This is something that I think is odd, and I'm going to go over the next part that I also think is a bit odd. This is also supposed to be oversampled from 61 megapixels, which is like 9K or something nuts like that. It says 4K up to 120 video, all by oversampling. That is also a big downside of the Canon R5, is that the downsampling, at least at 120, it's kind of a pixel binning, and even at 4K 60. So this is big if this is true, but I do have my doubts. Full frame 240 video recording, focus breathing, correction for video. Okay, great. I did hear Simon did an interview with the main guy of Canon Rumors, who actually just sold it, but is a consultant. He was saying that this is one of the things that kind of felt like it gave him some validity, saying, why would you add focus breathing correction for video? Like, that's an obscure spec. But if I'm not mistaken, that is also the same spec that is in the Canon EOS R6 Mark II. So that's not necessarily super obscure. I mean, you would add it because it makes sense if it was in the R6 Mark II, but maybe you can correct that, but I'm pretty sure that's in the R6 Mark II. So anyways, it says new overheating protection designed to similar to the R6 Mark II, at least 40 minutes for 8K video and over 60 minutes for 4K video. Dual CF Express Type B cards, standard HDMI port, big win if that's true. Dual USB Type C port. Odd, but really cool. 9.44 million EVF. New design, very angle LCD optimized for video shooting. Launch time 2023 Q2. Okay, so looking at those specs, let me quickly go over and kind of give you my reasons why this doesn't 100%, I guess, smell properly for me. I think that there's some oddities here. First was the sensor, like I mentioned before. It's kind of odd that they're saying this is 61 megapixels, which is the same as the Sony A7 R5. I don't know. So it's a little bit A7, yes, A7 R5. There's too many letters and numbers and all these things. The other thing that's a bit odd is 9.44 million EVF. Again, that's kind of odd because that's basically just copying Sony verbatim, and I don't think they're going to be using Sony technology. So I just wouldn't expect it to have that exact spec. It just kind of seems like, I don't know if wishful thinking or basically just saying, hey, we're going to top you. And that's kind of what somebody is shipping off here. Everything else looks fairly interesting. But I will say, if this is all being oversampled, like 8K 60 and 4K 120 even being oversampled, one of the big issues that I see with this, besides the heat issue, is battery life. So I have the Canon EOS R5 C, and the battery life is horrendous. The battery that they have on there, 8K doesn't even function properly with this thing. So 8K 60 rather doesn't function properly. It does oversample from 4K 60, but not 120. I think that they probably could do it from 120, possibly. That being said, the battery life is just so terrible. I don't understand how they're going to change that up without changing the battery in a significant way. So that's a bit odd. Also, the dual CF Express Type B slots, that would also be great and smart in my mind. But that makes me think that the body design may be super different. And I'm not sure, based upon what we saw from the R6 Mark II, which was a very, I guess, iterative update. I hope I'm saying that properly, but it wasn't nothing revolutionary. It was just an evolution. It was great because the R6 was also great. It did a lot of great things with the Mark II, but it was just basically going down the list and not necessarily making anything really big update. And considering this would be a 2.5-year update, I don't necessarily see them doing all these crazy things in R5. The other big issue that I see is that if you do this with the R5 Mark II, then where does that leave the R1, especially on the video specs? Of course, we could say that a stacked sensor would be better and it could be a lot faster if it's the R1, but this seems like it would be similar specs to what an R1 would be rather than what an R5 Mark II would be. I don't know. This sounds great, but a few things just make me feel odd about it. I would feel better if I know that they're going to be bringing out maybe a higher capacity battery that is in the same form factor, because I just don't see them completely changing the form factor of it and, maybe making it so much bigger that they would need a whole new battery. I think a lot of people would be a little bit upset by that, me included, considering how bad the battery life is on the R5C. It does also make sense for these specs to come in to the R1 because it would have that larger battery size. So that's enough of my rambling. What do you think about these specs? Drop in the comment section below and let me know.